Welcome to Motivational Mondays. This is Fed Razak, senior trading strategist here at CMTrading. And today we're going to discuss insanity. Yes, insanity. But before we start, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you do find value in this presentation, I would see it as a personal favor that you share with friends and family. Now, insanity. What's a definition? You guys know I like to start with definitions and then get right into the topic. So, insanity. One of the definitions for insanity is doing an item, an action, repetitively and expecting a different result. That is an example of insanity. Doing something repetitively, an action, thing, something, and expecting a different result as an outcome to it. Now, one of my favorite movies, here I'm going to do one more time, and most of the good movies that I've ever seen, I don't know about you guys, but most of the good movies I've ever seen is somewhere 20 years plus. And one of the classic movies is with Keanu Reeves, called The Matrix. Now, The Matrix is basically a system, it's a program system, and every so often people in this matrix have an ability to supersede it and look into the other world and control and be able to be present in the matrix. They're able to transcend from one world, one realm to another realm. It's a very interesting book. It's a book and it's also a movie. One of the greatest movies. Definitely see it if you haven't seen it. It's called The Matrix. You will not be disappointed with it. So one of the basic premises in the movie, I'm not going to give the entire thing away, but the people who live in the Matrix, they're kind of living a low life. They're kind of living a life that is not really present. They're kind of programmed into it. And they don't know how to transcend that. They don't know how to become conscious of it and to overcome that lull of it. And the only way that you can is if you supersede it and you get in touch with somebody in this outer realm world, and then you take something called the red pill. And the red pill kind of helps you make that transformation initially into the next world, and then you're able to, kind of go into both realms. Now, having that red pill is like the awareness. It's like any kind of awareness that we have when we kind of grow up. Sometimes it happens like mindfully, and most of the times it doesn't. And what happens is that we do things out of rote because we've lived into a certain space, into a certain character, because our family put us into a certain space, because the schools put us into a certain space. We live a certain character based on something in the past that has nothing to do with the skills and the abilities and our capacity as human beings in the present. Watch this. True story. There's a guy who took his SATs. Now, SATs are one of these type of tests administered in the United States into getting into a university. Now, there was some sort of, and he got on this test something like 1390 or 1400, which is a top test. And his grade averages were okay. Let's say they were B or C, but they weren't fantastic. But his entrance exam to get into universities was superb. Top 2% in the country. And because of that, this guy got into a top school and did phenomenally well and lived his entire life. Now, 30 years later, there was a mistake in the test. He had taken the test, and it was by mistake. This guy wasn't an A+ student. Remember, he got scores on this test that were not the actual scores. He scored much, much lower, and he was not supposed to go to a top school. And guess what happened? He lived a certain role because he got a certain number on a test, and because of that, he thought he was smart, and he was smart, but he never tapped into it earlier. But because he got this misinformation about his test and he got into really great schools, he was able to keep up with it, and he was able to tell himself he was really smart, even though he didn't know. He didn't know that he wasn't at that capacity, but subconsciously his body did know, and they were able to tap into things that he wasn't even aware of. So there are certain standards. If we change those standards, if we change our belief system, if we change those certain standards about things that we lived by in the past and change them in the present, we become a completely different human being. This is what I'm talking about. This is where a person can transcend their current box. Now, someone said this to me a long time ago, and I really believe this, is that we are all prisoners of not our circumstances, but of ourselves. Prisoners, not of circumstances, but of ourselves. Meaning, because we have limited beliefs, because we have limited perceptions of who we are in the capacity that surrounds us, we are who we are. Very important note. Because we are limited in our capacity to believe who we are in the environment that we're around, we are who we are. Now, the only way to change that is by changing yourself. Now, adding to yourself is not easy. It takes a lot of mindful effort, takes a lot of courage also, but it's done. Sometimes it could be done by mistake, and this guy got a mistaken exam, and he lived this role his entire life, even though he didn't know that he was capable of doing it. Or we could do it mindfully, and we could develop that belief in ourselves over time. Thank you for joining me for Motivational Mondays. We'll see you here next week.